What you're looking at right here is the M3-37mm anti-tank gun with 3 steely-eyed Marines manning the gun behind it. This particular gun was introduced in 1940 by the Army, and its primary use was going to be anti-tank. But typical of Marines innovating on the battlefield, they loved it for very, very different reasons. They introduced this gun to the Japanese at the island of Guadalcanal and continued to use it throughout the Pacific. One of the things that they liked about this 37mm gun is that it was small enough that they could manhandle it down jungle trails and around the island. The gun itself could fire a variety of rounds. It could fire armor-piercing, high-explosive, but the thing that the Marines really loved about it is it fired a type of round called a canister. And this canister, think of it like a big shotgun shell. It's got about 122 steel balls that when it comes out the end of that barrel, spreads out like a giant shotgun. And this was particularly a devastating weapon to the Japanese when they would attack their defensive positions.
Here I have 2 nice 16-inch Land Rover wheels, which I've managed to purchase on eBay. What I have here are 2 250 kilogram in-suspension type suspension units made for trailers. Now this is one of the hubs. Now this hub is quite heavy. I would say it's probably about 7 kilos on its own. What I'm intending to do is use a piece of 58mm outside diameter steel scaffold pipe. Now this scaffold pipe has a wall thickness of approximately 3.5mm steel, which is fairly robust. It has to be fairly strong for the purpose it's used for. If you look at this picture here, there are some other pictures around on the web, but this will do the job. If you look at this, that is the what I will call the pipe axle, and the centres of that run straight through the wheels, and there are no suspension units on the ends of this pipe axle. Right, so we now have 2 pieces. Okay, now from that photograph I've plotted out the shield plating for the front of the gun, and I've worked out using a steel rule and so on the screen of the computer the approximate dimensions of the shield. okay, 75 down there, 75 down there, and a bowl that's 150 millimeters in diameter. I happen to have used this a few times for odd things. I then go over it with a larger one, which is about 1/4 inch diameter. Wahee! Come on, get out the way, cat. Busy, move. Right, what I've done next is, as I showed earlier, this is the way I've decided to mount this suspension arm onto this, what I'm going to say is a pipe axle, scaffold pipe. I'm going to finish off the welding here. I've just done some simple quick welds there just to hold it in place last night, and see how the geometry was starting to look. I've cut the plates out to mount onto the suspension units, and as I said, I've profiled the ends so that I can weld around them there and around on the other side. So that's the next stage to do. Weld these up at the ends. Cat seems to like it. I'm now welding up the ends of the trails. Basically it's the shackle point. This point here basically sits on each side of the load bearing member. So these plates here on the sides are actually 6 inches long, and they slightly taper in towards the rear. Now, the trails on the railgun, I think, are actually a lot heavier than this. I would suspect they're about 3 inch wide by about 3.5 inches deep in this area here. But that's not an easy stuff to try and get hold of. So I'm just using the 2-inch box section, which I've got here. It's cheap enough to get hold of. Yeah, they're 248 centimeters long. That's taking into account the extensions I've welded on, where they connect to the load bearing member. Now, from those pictures, I've basically worked out the shapes to cut. This is the traverse point which I'm basically building up. Now it has bearings in it, and these bearings are sat inside a piece of piping. At the moment I can slide this down and it exposes the bearings I've got mounted in here. That's the side for there, and this one here to be welded on here. We've got to put webs in. If you look at the picture, you'll see that there's several webs which have to be welded in to make the sides more rigid. Okay, as a rough jig while I set this up, by the way, I'm only adding, I think it was 15 inches or 16 inches, I think it might be 16 inches of pipe onto this. In the end I've decided a barrel length of about 1.7 meters, I think, should be quite adequate for this, instead of the 2.1. I think it'll still look quite nice when it's finished. It might have more of a slightly more of a howitzer look to it than the 37, but I'm just trying to go with what's sensible. Now, these two pieces of angle iron, I've cable tied them. Basically, when you pull a round surface into the angle, it should sit at a parallel, if you know what I mean. Probably good enough. Obviously this will have to be acid etch primed as well, because it's zinc coated, so I've got to get the paint to stick properly. Somehow this propane canister could be mounted in the pipe underneath the barrel, so I can take the front of this cap off, and you can see it takes a screw-on fitting, so I'd have to find some form of connector which you can screw on, which depresses the valve down inside there. I'll put a few shots of the real one here. Yeah, so you can see I've just used bits of tubing and I've welded that tube in onto the side, and what I've done is I've put that shaft running through there, which is M12 studding. Now if I rotate that round back to how I had it, the idea is that eventually I'll have a universal joint on here. Got some paint on it. I've also fixed the trunnion blocks on it, as you can see there. Yeah, so you can see how the suspensions work. Yeah, that's come out quite well. The hubs also look quite good on this. They are trailer hubs, and these are Land Rover wheels, if anyone's not knowing what they are. So 6.5 pitch circle, 6.5 inch pitch circle diameter Land Rover wheels. Yeah, I've just noticed I've made a small mistake just here with the bearing blocks. The shield's not rocking back properly. I'm sure I'll find a way around that little problem. Maybe 12 inches is all I would need. Now if we look inside the end of this, you'll notice there's a large washer with a hole in. Now this is going to be to trap the gas in there to stop it all just floating up the barrel. So basically it needs a large washer welding in. Ooh, let's see, it could be, I'll have to put a rod down here and check the depth. So I'm going to have to do that in my barrel, otherwise the gas is just going to float up. So this will hold the gas in there, but the air will still come back down the barrel, float into there, because you need the propane and you need air to get a combustion, plus the spark of course. So that's how these things work. Here's the rear end which I've sawn off. Now you can see now how it looks inside. You can see this long pipe here is where the gas is fed in from, and inside here, this brass piece is the connector which the solenoid connects to, and the pipe which runs into this and is welded has got 4 large holes which are around about 10, maybe 12 millimeters in diameter. As a matter of interest, have a look at this. Come on, you went in before. Do it again. Show me. Prove it. Prove me right. I've just had this mounted in the vise while I stripped the solenoid off the back, so I've probably slightly squashed something. There we go. I've just cut this out of 3mm thick mild steel plate. Now this here is going to be the breech section. Okay, so there's the centre marked off, just a cross diagonal, and then I've marked off the circle. It's actually 10.8 centimeters. So I've set it up in the vise between 2 pieces of angle iron, and you can see there's a G-clamp running here through the hole which I've cut. So that's clamped up on the other two, on the, across the 2 sides of the angle iron. Need some leverage. Anyway, I'll pause the camera for now. Give myself a bit of a chance to do a bit of swearing, and hopefully when I turn the camera back on, it'll be done. is probably put a couple of welds in this thing. I'm going to have to basically put it in the vise and hold it the right shape while I put a few welds on this, and then see how it looks. Okay, since making this box, I've realised that because of the dimensions I've made it quite large, I can actually get a number of things inside here. For instance, here's the rear end of the combustion chamber. Now that's going to be sat in there, approximately that position there, inside of the barrel, inside the rear of the barrel, and the gas jet, the brass thing at the top there, is going to be, as I show it there, at the top, and down at the bottom, that's going to be where the spark plug is going to sit, because as I've mentioned before, the gas is heavier than air, so it drops down to the bottom. Now, this is what it'll look like from the side of the breech when the control panel's fitted in it. Just temporarily put the fascia panel on, but what I'm going to do when it's finished is I'm going to have some sort of a hinged aluminium or stainless steel panel which will flap up and down here. Okay, so that's how the barrel's all going to be looking when it's in. It's actually going to be slid a little bit, about 4 inches further forward than it's showing at the moment. Okay, once I've worked out how it's all mounted, I've put it together on the carriage minus the shield. It's easier to put the gun on without the shield attached. Looks okay. And that's these parts here. So this is the two, well, I don't know what the proper technical names for these are, but they're the parts which bury into the ground and stop the carriage recoiling backwards. So for want of a better term, at the moment I'll just call them shovel plates. And cut a piece out in cardboard. After you've welded these parts onto your box, then cut a piece of cardboard out that fits, then all 4 of them, because there's 1 on each side, yeah, so you need 4 of these, should all be near enough the same. Okay, so because this eye sits in 2 positions, either down or upwards, I've decided to have a go at making my own version of this, and this is what I've done. Okay, I've configured this in a flat bar. You can see I've had to weld it here because I couldn't bend the flat bar without having a blacksmith's forge. Okay, so once it's fitted on with the bolts, it should look like that. Now, I haven't welded it down, well, not yet anyway. I may not weld it down, in fact, but I'll have a think about that, possibly overnight, make a decision. But one way or the other, it doesn't really matter. You can see how this thing looks when it's in its upright position. And you can see how it's come out down there now. Yeah, so it's not looking too bad now. Yeah, so if I haven't welded this down or anything yet, basically that swings off the hook there, and this is how it works. Yeah, so it's a nice big hook system. So these are stainless steel 6mm bolts, M6 bolts. Hopefully they should be strong enough to do this job. That makes it stand out with the American one. It has this steel shield which probably extends out. I'm not sure of sizes yet, I've still got to calculate that. It could be around 12 to 18 inches long maybe. So that's got to be made, and it seems to guard the gun, the aiming guy. Don't know if they're one in the same, but the fella who's operating the gun, operating the traverse and elevation, is on this side of the shield and is guarded using that shield. Is guarded from the breech area. Yeah, so this part, which holds the gun, the main gun, and actually traverses and so on and elevates, that's called the yoke. Now other parts, yeah, so as I say, they're bolted on. They're just 20mm galvanized pipe. That's the zinc edge primer on, and you can see they're bolted there. Basically what I did was I welded an M8 nut inside the end of the piping. You can see where it's a little bit rough around the edge there. Yeah, so it's starting to come together quite well now. The idea is, what I'm trying to do is fit this disc up. Now, to make it like the original bird scarer system, it should be about 15 inches up the barrel. But the problem, of course, that I'm having is that I can't get this long. You see, it's like an outrigger idea which I'm doing. I can't fit this into the casing if it's 15-inch long on the arms. I decided to drill 2 holes in this back end here, 8mm, and drill 2 8mm holes in there, so I can basically put that in there, then drop that in and bolt them together, then slide it forwards. So that's what I'm working on right now. Jesus!